You know, sometimes people just don't notice your pain. They didn't care when you were hurting. But now, they're the ones who are shaken. They didn't flinch when you were crying. They didn't slow down when you were breaking. They didn't even pause to check in when you were pouring every ounce of yourself into trying to make things work. But now that you've gone quiet, now that you've moved different, they're shaken. Funny how that works, isn't it? When you needed their love, their effort, their empathy, they had none to give. But the second you stopped needing it, the second you stopped reaching out, something inside them changed. Now they're watching. Now they're uneasy. Now they're wondering what happened to the version of you they used to take for granted. As the great Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But they will never forget how you made them feel." And right now, they're starting to feel what you felt. Emptiness, uncertainty, and the ache of being unseen. The tables have turned. Not because you played a game, but because you finally stopped playing theirs. See, when you were hurting, they assumed you'd stay stuck, that you'd keep showing up, that you'd always be there, no matter how little they gave. But growth is a silent process. It doesn't come with announcements or grand declarations. It comes when the person who once begged for answers no longer needs any, and that is when they panic. This isn't about revenge. It's not about making them suffer. It's about recognizing your own worth and honestly refusing to be the only one bleeding in a one-sided connection. As Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And the moment you withdrew that consent, everything started shifting. They're shaken now because your silence says more than your words ever could. They're unsettled because you're not trying to prove anything anymore. That calm, that peace you found, that's power. Unapologetic, unbothered power. And believe me, they feel it now more than ever. This video is your blueprint for understanding that shift. I'm going to break down exactly why they couldn't care less when you were broken, and why they can't stop thinking about you now. You'll learn what changed, what it triggered inside them, and what that means for your healing and your future. Because healing doesn't just make you feel better. It changes how the world responds to you, including the ones who once hurt you. So stick with me until the end. What you're about to learn will not only explain their behavior, it will completely shift the way you see your own worth. If you're done explaining yourself, if you're done chasing love that should have been freely given, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below. My peace is louder than their silence. Let's show the world what happens when you stop begging and start becoming. Let's begin. Stay focused. Key point 1. They were comfortable while you were in pain. One of the hardest truths to accept is this: they were comfortable while you were hurting. Your pain didn't move them. Your tears didn't shake them. In fact, they may have felt relief when you finally stopped asking for their love, their attention, or their effort. And not because they didn't see your suffering, but because your pain didn't inconvenience them. When someone is avoidant, emotionally immature, or simply used to being in control, your vulnerability doesn't spark empathy. It triggers their detachment. Instead of leaning in, they pull back. Instead of helping you through the hurt, they distance themselves, sometimes even acting annoyed or cold. It's not because your feelings were too much. It's because they never intended to match your depth. As Brené Brown puts it, we cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. But you were showing your most vulnerable self to someone who never made the space to really see you. You were trying to water a garden in concrete. And yet, they stayed comfortable because you were still showing up, even in your pain. They didn't care because they didn't have to. Your love was consistent. Your loyalty was assumed. You were the emotional anchor, and they knew it. That safety, that assurance, they fed on it without feeding it back. You were hurting, but you were still available. And to someone who's used to being emotionally passive, your availability kept them emotionally lazy. But here's what they didn't expect: that your hurt would eventually turn into clarity. That the very pain they ignored would become the foundation of your strength. Pain has a way of becoming a teacher, and it taught you to stop begging for what should have been freely given. It taught you to stop showing up where you weren't being met. Now that you've detached, now that you've healed even just a little, they're no longer comfortable. The silence that used to mean they'll come around now means you might be gone for good. And that is unsettling, because people don't miss the pain they caused. They miss the comfort they lost. So if you're wondering why they didn't care back then, but seem shaken now, the answer is simple. Your pain didn't threaten them, but your peace does. Your tears didn't challenge their control, but your absence shatters the illusion of it. You stopped showing up in pain, and now, for the first time, they're the one left wondering where the love went. Key point 2. Your energy was their emotional safety net. Even if they didn't say it out loud, your presence was their emotional safety net. You were the one who brought stability, who held space for them, who checked in, reached out, forgave, and tried again and again. Even when they were distant, even when they gave you breadcrumbs. You were the one quietly doing the emotional labor, and they were used to it. They depended on your energy without ever matching it. Think about it. How many times did you initiate the conversation? How many times did you smooth things over, apologize first, or try to fix what they kept breaking? That wasn't weakness. It was love. But the truth is, they became addicted to your emotional effort. And like most addictions, they didn't notice the value of what they were getting until the supply stopped. As the legendary Toni Morrison once said, if you want to fly, you got to give up the shit that weighs you down. You were carrying not just your love, but the weight of the entire relationship. And while you were breaking under the pressure, they were cruising, safe, knowing you'd always catch the fall. That safety gave them power. Your presence gave them peace. But it came at the cost of your own. The thing is, people don't always realize they're leaning on you until you're no longer there. Now that you've pulled your energy back, whether you did it intentionally or because you just ran out of emotional fuel, they feel it hard. The silence is louder, the lack of validation stings, and the absence of your steady energy leaves them ungrounded. They might not say it. They might not even fully understand it. But they're shaken because they no longer have access to the emotional stability they took for granted. You were the one holding the emotional center, and when you stepped away, the whole structure began to collapse. Now they're scrambling, unsure of how to regulate themselves emotionally without you there to guide the way. That's not love, that's codependence. And what scares them now is the realization that the person they counted on to hold it all together is no longer willing to carry that burden. You didn't just walk away. You removed the energy they were leaning on, and that's what truly shook them. Not the breakup, not the distance, but the undeniable truth that you're no longer emotionally available to cushion their detachment. Key point 3. They mistook your kindness for permanence. Here's what they won't admit, but you need to know. They never thought you'd leave. Not really. They assumed your kindness, your forgiveness, your patience was endless. They thought no matter how much they neglected you, ignored your needs, or failed to show up, you'd always be there. And so they treated your love like it was guaranteed, like it was permanent. They saw your softness and confused it with weakness. They mistook your emotional availability for naivety. They believed that no matter how close you got to walking away, you'd always come back. Why? Because you always had before. That became their pattern. Push you away, then wait for you to come back and repair the damage they caused. But kindness isn't weakness, and real love doesn't beg for attention. As Dr. Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Eventually, you did. And that's what changed everything. You stopped ignoring the red flags. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped accepting crumbs and calling it love. You didn't become cold. You became clear. And when you got clear, they got confused. The same person they thought they had wrapped around their finger suddenly stopped reaching out. The love they thought they could dip in and out of like a pool on a hot day wasn't available anymore. And now they're shaken. Not because you're gone, but because for the first time, they realize you meant it. That's what happens when someone mistakes your loyalty for permanence. They think they have time. They think they can take without giving. But the truth is, love has limits, even the deepest kind. And when those limits are reached, the withdrawal is more powerful than any argument or goodbye. Now they're haunted by your absence. They're replaying old conversations. They're wondering why the version of you who loved them through everything no longer exists. But here's the thing. They didn't lose you overnight. They lost you slowly every time they ignored your pain. Every time they thought you'd stay no matter what. Every time they bet on your loyalty instead of offering their own. You weren't permanent. You were patient. And when your patience ran out, they finally saw the difference. That's what shook them. And that's what they can't stop thinking about now. Key point 4. Your growth made you unrecognizable to them. One of the most unexpected things that shakes someone after a breakup isn't just your absence. It's your evolution. The version of you they once knew no longer exists. The one who tolerated disrespect, made excuses for them, constantly reached out, or kept the door open. That person is gone, and that transformation terrifies them. When they left, or emotionally checked out, they thought time would freeze, that you'd stay stuck, that your world would revolve around what they did or didn't do. But healing has a funny way of rewriting your entire story. You grew, you reflected, you leveled up. And now you carry yourself differently. You speak differently. Your energy is different. As Oprah Winfrey once said, You don't become what you want. You become what you believe. You stopped believing you weren't enough. You stopped believing their inconsistent love was all you deserved. And when you began to believe in your value, everything about you started to shift, including how they see you. That shift creates discomfort for them, not because you did something wrong, but because they don't know how to interact with this version of you. They can't guilt you the same way. They can't manipulate your emotions the same way. They can't predict your reactions anymore. You've stepped into your power, and it's no longer centered around them. They're shaken because now you're a mirror. When they look at you now, they don't see the person they once controlled. They see everything they failed to appreciate. And more than that, they see how little they've grown by comparison. Your glow-up shines a spotlight on their stagnancy, their patterns, their lack of emotional depth. They expected to see the same you, hurting, waiting, wishing. Instead, they see someone thriving, someone selective, someone with standards now. That's intimidating. That's unfamiliar. And people fear what they don't understand. So if you've ever wondered why someone who once couldn't care less is suddenly watching your every move, reappearing in subtle ways, or acting oddly emotional, it's not just because they miss you. It's because your growth made you unrecognizable and unforgettable. Key point 5. They lost control the moment. You stopped explaining yourself. One of the most unsettling things for someone who once had emotional power over you is realizing they no longer have access. Not to your thoughts, not to your feelings, not even to your explanations. The moment you stopped justifying your emotions, defending your reactions, or begging to be understood, was the exact moment they lost control. In the past, they could trigger you. They could say something dismissive, withdraw affection, or act distant, and you'd respond, usually by chasing, overthinking, or trying to fix things. They knew how to get a reaction out of you, and that reaction gave them control. Because when you're explaining yourself, you're still trying to earn their approval. As philosopher Epictetus once said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You finally realize that you can't control their actions, only your response to them. And you stopped explaining your worth to someone who never truly listened. That change, that silence, that refusal to engage in the same draining cycles, it shook them. Suddenly they couldn't read you. You weren't showing your cards anymore. You weren't telling them what you needed, because they already failed to give it when it mattered. Your silence wasn't passive, it was intentional. Now, they're left in the dark. They're second-guessing. They're wondering what you're thinking, how you feel, and why you've gone quiet. The same silence they once used to manipulate or punish is now being reflected back at them. And they don't know what to do with it. They might even try to provoke you, send a random message, post something targeted, or flirt with someone new publicly. But none of it is about moving on. It's about regaining emotional control. And when they realize they can't pull you back in like before, that powerlessness becomes deeply uncomfortable. You stopped explaining yourself because you finally understood something crucial. Those who truly care don't need constant explanations, and those who don't will never truly hear them. And once you took your energy back, they didn't just lose your attention. They lost their grip on the version of you they once controlled. Key point 6. They're haunted by the way they handled you. When everything settles, after the silence, after the games, after the masks come off, what's left is reflection. And whether they admit it or not, they're haunted by how they treated you. Maybe not at first, maybe not even for a while. But eventually the weight of what they lost, and more importantly, how they lost it, starts to echo in the back of their mind. See, when you were giving them chance after chance, they didn't think twice. They believed you'd bounce back. They assumed you'd always be around. But time has a way of exposing things pride tries to bury. The moment they realize you're not coming back, not chasing, not feeding their ego anymore, they're forced to replay the scenes they chose to ignore. As Shakespeare wrote, the past is prologue. And now, their past decisions are writing the next chapter of their regret. That time they dismissed your feelings. That conversation they ignored. That apology they never gave. Those things don't just disappear. They linger. Especially when they see you becoming someone they no longer have access to. They begin to ask themselves the questions they avoided while they still had you. Why didn't I just listen? Why couldn't I give more? Why did I take them for granted? These questions don't go away. In fact, the more they see you thriving, the louder those thoughts become. And what shakes them the most isn't just your growth. It's that they played a role in pushing you toward it, not by supporting you, but by neglecting you. They had a front row seat to someone genuine, loving and loyal, and they fumbled it. They may try to distract themselves. They may even tell themselves stories to justify how they acted. But the truth always has a way of resurfacing, especially when they realize that no one else has made them feel the way you did, and that no one ever will, because the version of you they had access to doesn't exist for them anymore. And now, they're haunted, not just by losing you, but by the fact that it was entirely their doing. Not because you weren't enough, but because they refused to meet you where you were. That memory of your love, your patience, and their own indifference isn't going anywhere. And deep down, they know it. Key point 7. They realize you were the one who actually loved them. At the end of it all, after the distance, the silence, the detachment, the truth hits them like a freight train. You were the one who actually loved them. Not conditionally, not for convenience, but fully, patiently, and sincerely. And when that realization lands, it doesn't come with peace. It comes with regret, confusion, and deep emotional discomfort. When they were with you, they couldn't see it clearly. Your love felt normal to them, expected even. They got used to your support, your consistency, your check-ins, your way of always making space for their flaws. In their mind, it wasn't special. It was just you being you. And that's where they got it all wrong. As poet Rumi once said, try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. And life has a funny way of forcing people to see the truth, especially once you've let go. When they start comparing new connections to the bond they had with you, it becomes painfully obvious. No one sees them like you did. No one loved them like you did. No one stayed like you did. You loved them without games. You were honest, even when it hurt. You showed up on the days they didn't deserve it. And now, in your absence, they see that what you gave wasn't ordinary. It was rare. And most of all, it was real. This realization doesn't hit them during the breakup. It hits them after they've gone looking elsewhere, after they've entertained attention that lacked depth, after they've sat alone in silence, waiting for the comfort of your love to magically reappear. And when it doesn't, they start to see the truth. You weren't just someone who loved them, you were someone who taught them what love really is. That truth shakes them. Not because they suddenly learned how to love, but because they realize they never gave you back what you so freely gave to them. They fumbled the real thing. And now, the weight of that truth is something they have to carry. So, while you were outgrowing the version of yourself who settled, they were finally waking up to the one person they never should have let go. You. And that realization, that's what hits the hardest. So if you've ever felt like they didn't care when you were hurting, but now they're shaken by your absence, know this: the tables have turned. The love you gave, the strength you showed, and the effort you poured into that relationship were never as invisible as they seemed. Now that you're no longer chasing, no longer begging for validation, they see it clearly. The truth of what they lost and the power they no longer hold over you. But here's the thing: you don't need them to see it to move forward. Your peace, your growth, and your self-worth are not dependent on their acknowledgement. You've taken control of your own narrative, and that's where your power lies. If you've learned anything from this journey, let it be this: you are not their second chance. You are the beginning of your own transformation, and that's where your real value lies. You've already proven you're capable of loving deeply. Now it's time to love yourself first and foremost. If this message resonated with you and you're ready to embrace your own strength, take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next empowering video. And in the comments, share your story, because there's someone out there who needs to hear it. Remember, your absence will always speak louder than your presence ever did in a place where it wasn't valued. Keep standing in your truth, because what's coming next for you is far greater than anything they could ever offer. Stay strong, stay unapologetic, and know your worth. I'll see you in the next video.